Chapter 36, The Black Dragon. The dragon's length was at least 7 meters. With its whole body covered in jet black scales, there were 5 sharp claws on each of its long forelegs. Big wings grew from its back, which was slightly shining as they were clad with magic power. Every time it flapped the wings, an unbelievable gust of wind appeared, even after taking the size of its wings into account. However, its most impressive feature was its golden eyes that floated in the night like moons. Its eyes that closed vertically like a reptile's were dangerously narrowed as they released beautiful light. The golden eyes were glaring at the party from the air. A low groan was leaked from the black dragon's throat. Its overwhelming power couldn't be compared to the Hyvaria he saw at the bottom of Raisin Grand Canyon's ravine. Although Hyvarias themselves were generally recognized as troublesome, high-level demonic beasts, when compared to the black dragon before them, it was as if they were small birds. Its majestic appearance made it suited as the king of the sky. Just like a frog being stared at by a snake, Aiko and the others stiffened. Will was especially pale-faced, and Gatagata trembled as if he would collapse at any moment. Inside his mind, he might be having flashback from when he was attacked. Rinku had already seen the claw marks from the black dragon's attack that created branches off the river. He thought it must be a very strong demonic beast, but feeling the magic power and pressure from the black dragon in front of his eyes, he revised that it was 3 times of what he had imagined. Remembering the demonic beasts in the abyss, it was not as strong as the Hydra, but he could feel that it had the same power as class of demonic beasts from 90th floor. The black dragon confirmed Will's appearance, and Jirori sharpened its glare. Following that, in front of the stiffened humans, it slowly lifted its head and concentrated its magic inside the opened jaws where sharp fangs lined up. KYUUWAAAAA! Exclamation mark. A mysterious timbre began to dye the sunset and reverberated throughout the mountains. Inside Rinku's mind, he remembered the breath attack that erased the adventurers on the river. Rinku, evacuate. Having issued the warning, Rinku and Yoma immediately leaped away from his location to evacuate. Yue and Shia followed after them. However, some people were unable to react to his warning. No, in this case it could be said most of them. Aiko, the students, and even Will were stiffened and didn't move from their spots. Aiko and the students' bodies were unable to keep up with such a sudden event, while Will was bound by fear that made him unable to even avert his gaze. Rinku, TCH. Rinku issued an order to Yoma, Yue, and Shia using telepathy, then he suddenly returned to his previous location using ground shrinker and stood between Aiko's party and the dragon. Normally, he'd just leave. He didn't feel bad about abandoning Aiko, rather, he didn't understand why she came here to search for Will, who miraculously survived. But his job was to bring him back if he was alive. That's why Rinku couldn't abandon him. Immediately, a straight, black, laser-like breath fired from the dragon. The breath didn't let out any sound and immediately reached where Rinku was standing. The attack accompanied by a tremendous roar, however Yoma hopped in front of everyone, lifting his blindfold and absorbing the dragon's attack. After the attack is fully absorbed by Yoma, Yue took the opportunity to deal damage to the dragon. Yue, Cursed Sky. At the moment the magic's name was announced, a black, swirling orb of 4 meters in diameter appeared above the black dragon. The deep darkness that could suck in anyone who saw it immediately fell and crushed the black dragon into the ground. A roar came as the black dragon sprawled on the ground, and its breath was interrupted when it raised a scream from the impact. However, the swirling orb, as if saying that's not enough, didn't disappear and exerted extreme pressure on the black dragon, sinking it into the ground. It was Yue's gravity magic. By creating a swirling gravity ball, it crushed its target using supergravity that was proportional to the amount of consumed magic power. It was a convenient magic that could change its direction using the gravitational force. The gravity magic didn't consume much magic power if targeted towards the caster itself. However, if the gravity ball was used to attack things, space, and other people, just like what happened just now, it consumed huge amount of magic power and Yue at the least need 10 seconds to prepare it. Because Yue herself still hadn't completely mastered this magic, the invocation time and magic consumption could still become much more efficient by training. Yoma, Yue, I might have to steal that technique from you, Tilda. Yoma gave a sly smirk to Yue, who turned her head from him. The Sky King was crucified on the ground. It painfully braced its limbs to somehow escape from the pressuring attack. But, immediately following that were the rabbit ears that came fluttering from the sky, and Shia was shouting, "Stop, Tilda!" as she fell together with Doryukin. Holding the sledgehammer, which was further accelerated by Outburst, she used the high stance aimed at the black dragon's head. The impact was incomparable to any impact that had happened before. At the moment of impact, the ground burst and flew radially, accompanied by a thundering sound. It created a crater that looked like a result of a bombing. That was thanks to Doryuken's remodeling by Hajime. Gravity magic was granted to the compressed Azensham that was the main material. However, it was not the one that neutralized like the ones in the unmanned reconnaissance planes, but the opposite where the ore could increase its weight. The weight increased according to the amount of magic power supplied. Furthermore, those who received the ultra-heavy blow wouldn't be able to escape from serious damage. That's right, if it was directly hit. Together with the black dragon's roar, a flame bullet approached Yue at tremendous speed from inside the dust that scattered by Doryuken. Yue immediately did an emergency evasion by falling to the right. However, the gravity ball magic was cancelled instead. The dust was cleared up as the after effect of the previous flame bullet, and there was the black dragon who managed to evade Doryuken, which sunk to the ground by a paper-thin margin. At the moment of impact, it seemed to somehow evade using the peculiar strength of a dragon. Having its restraints removed, the black dragon did one rotation in high speed as if trying to dispel its grudge, and its large mass of a tail hit Shia, who was just pulling out Doryuken. By a hair's breadth, Shia used Doryuken as a shield and jumped back to kill the impact. Because she was greatly blown away at the same time, she disappeared into the trees. The black dragon used the momentum from the rotation and recovered its posture, and its golden eyes were glaring at Rinku. Not just passed towards Will behind him. Rinku immediately pulled out the bone in his right arm and formed it into a sniper rifle and fired it. Many roars resounded, accompanied by flashes that cut through the sky and attacked the black dragon. Without being able to evade, the black dragon received direct hits from the storm of destruction, blown away from its spot, and thrown into the river with a tremor, creating a magnificent sprays. Because Rinku thought it'd be bad for Will to be in its line of fire, he charged at the black dragon. Rinku repeatedly fired in succession just like before. However, the black dragon got up accompanied with roar that scattered the river's water. Somehow, it ignored Rinku and fired a flame bullet that was aimed at Will. However, Yoma hopped in front of Will and once again absorbed the attack. Because it aimed at Will, Rinku dared to approach it and tried to attack furiously to gain its attention. But, the black dragon acted as if it didn't even care if Rinku was there. It continued to target Will. However, GOAA! Exclamation mark. The impact from the dragon's roar dispersed the attacks. Moreover, having heard the tremendous roar and stared by the golden eyes, Will let out similar HIH scream as he backed away and fell on his butt, reaching the female student's spot. Yoma smirked at Will cowering. Yoma, coward. Rinku, who completely judged her to be outside of the combat assets, shouted at Aiko to escape. Aiko was hesitating. Rinku and Yoma were also Aiko's student after all, so to left him in front of this powerful demonic beast made her hesitate as a teacher. At that time, the black dragon began to flap its wings and flew into the sky while blowing the surroundings river water away. In addition, it rapidly shot flame bullets at Will. Although Rinku had fired the sniper rifle in quick succession, he couldn't get its attention at all. The black dragon's scales, similar to scorpion-like thing that boasted its hardness in the past, was only slightly scratched even after receiving direct hits from the sniper. The black dragon stubbornly targeted Will. It was as if it was being manipulated by something. It faithfully obeyed the order like a robot. It kept trying to kill Will even after being restrained by gravity before. It seemed to think nothing of those who tried to obstruct it. Although Rinku didn't understand why it obstinately targeted Will, it was a convenient thing, since its target was already decided, so he gave out an instruction to Yue and Yoma. Rinku, Yue. Yoma. Protect Will. I'll defeat this guy. Yue, NH, leave it to me. Yoma then walked over to sit on a rock near Aiko's gang and Will. Yoma, whelp. You heard the man. Yoma put his blindfold down as Shinobi began to hysterically nag him. Shinobi, aren't you going to help him? Yoma, nah, he's got it. Hearing Rinku's instruction, Yue immediately fell towards Will and stood in front of him. When she snuck a look at her back, irritation surfaced when she saw Aiko and the students who couldn't move well in this situation, and she muttered in displeasure. Yue, if you don't want to die, hide behind me. Yoma smirked at Yue. Yoma, acting tough for your man I see. Yue ignored Yoma's teasing, but it's clear it rang like a bell inside her. The students were trivials, but regarding Aiko, Rinku was at least concerned about her. so she let out those words to not let her die. Incidentally, she had already forgotten how Aiko became a hindrance to them. The students moved closer to Yue without particularly reacting to Yue's cold words. They realized by Yue's side was the safest place, thanks to the rampart of ice that chantlessly constructed using the surrounding moisture. Normally, they'd have the ability to fight some more. But, no matter even if they knew Rinku and Yoma were alive, the day they were almost killed by the Behemoth and Traum soldiers as well as how they fell to their death into the abyss still traumatized their minds. They followed Aiko because even if they couldn't join the hero group in the dungeon, they couldn't just half-ass things. Even so, their magic was ineffective against the Black Dragon, coupled with the roar filled with killing intent, made their heart completely withered. Their mental state was completely unsuited for combat. Because Yoma and Yue were there, Rinku was assured of Will's safety and concentrated on attacking. The flying Black Dragon was concentrating on destroying Yue's defensive wall, as it targeting Will on the other side of the wall, even now. However, flame bullets were incapable of penetrating the wall, then it raised its head in an arch again as it realized it. It began to focus magic power inside its mouth. Rinku, it's the first time I've been ignored this far. That's why, I'll do anything to make you not ignoring me. Yoma, looks like the dragon struck a nerve. Aiko looked over at Yoma, confused by his words. Aiko, Yoma, what are you saying? Yoma, just watch, you'll see. As Rinku put the sniper rifle back into his body, he took out Schlagen from the treasure box. Immediately after he activated Lightning Clad, the 3 meters weapon with an atrocious form let out bright red sparks. As expected, the Black Dragon realized Rinku's next move was a dangerous one, and it turned its mouth, aiming at Rinku. It was just like Rinku had predicted, it couldn't ignore him. At the same time the Black Dragon fired the death-spreading breath, Rinku's Schlagen finished the loading and fired. They let out the same extreme flash. They became a storm of death. Black and red aurora were clashing against each other. At the moment of collision, a terrific shockwave was generated and the surrounding trees were blown away. Just by power alone, they were probably equal. However, the two auroras clearly divided between the victor and the loser from their nature. Although the breath continued to let out an excellent aurora, Schlagen was specialized in penetrating through a single point. Therefore, the breath was inevitably broken through, and the power reached the Black Dragon. The head of the Black Dragon which fired the breath suddenly curved upward. The full metal jacket made out of star ore penetrated the breath and hit the dragon's opened mouth. However, the wound was far from a mortal one. With the bending of the breath's trajectory and power, several of its sharp fangs evaporated and as it nearly passed through the side of its head, it stopped before one of its wings on its back was blown off. Guru AAA! Exclamation mark. Yoma, it's over. The students looked at Yoma, unsure if he's right or not. The Black Dragon fell as it spun towards the ground and let out a pained scream. Rinku was fortunately able to evade the breath using aerodynamic, and while he was upside down in midair he used ground shrinker. As he dived at high speed, he used Grand Leg to attack the Black Dragon's abdomen. Zudo NH. The lower abdomen let out a roaring sound from the impact, and the Black Dragon's body folded. The ground was radially cracked by the impact. It couldn't be said that the damage was considerable even though the Black Dragon let out a scream. Its armor was capable of enduring the sniper rifle after all. However, having assumed that, Rinku attacked further as he greatly held out the artificial left arm. Key! Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Machine-like sounds came from the artificial arm. The oscillation smash he used before fell down. It was Rinku's fist of destruction that was thrust in high speed and was capable of pulverizing a large boulder in a single blow, and it mercilessly attacked the Black Dragon's abdomen. Along with the muffled sound, the scales on the abdomen were cracked. With the purpose of transmitting the impact, its insides received considerable damage from this attack, and the Black Dragon raised a pained voice again as it vomited large amounts of blood from its mouth. Maybe because it thought it'd be dangerous if this kept up, the Black Dragon poured its magic power in one of its wings and a windstorm appeared. Then it tried to forcefully regain its posture. Once again, Rinku used aerodynamic to evade. He didn't forget to leave a parting gift. At the moment the Black Dragon turned its golden eyes towards Rinku, who escaped into the air, a big explosion occurred under its abdomen. The dragon's gigantic figure flew 2 meters from the surface from the impact. Rinku's parting gift was a grenade. Receiving an impact at the same place as before, it couldn't be helped that it was unable to raise a scream and only let out a muffled groan. With its head drooped to endure it, blood was flowing from the black dragon's mouth. Somehow, its groan weakened. Maybe because the black dragon recognized Rinku as a threat, it looked away from Will towards Rinku and rapid-fired flame bullets from its mouth. The flame bullets flew through the air as if they were anti-aircraft fire. However, none of the fire hit Rinku. Rinku was using aerodynamic and ground shrinker simultaneously to freely run in the sky, leaving after images. Rinku knocked down the black dragon using hit and away tactic. He fired Donnerschlag from medium range at nasty places such as the claws, gums, eyes, tail's base, and butt. In the next moment, he drew closer and used the combo of Oscillation Smash from the Shotshell Outburst plus Grand Arm to hit the head and flank. The black dragon certainly began to give out a weeping voice. With its scales cracked all over the place, a large amount of blood dripped from its mouth. Tamai, incredible. Having watched Rinku's fight, Tamai Asushi spontaneously muttered that from the safety area behind Yue. Without having to say it, the other students and Aiko were silently agreeing as they nodded, and they were unable to look away from the overwhelming fight. As for Will, he intensely watched Rinku with sparkling eyes as if he didn't remember he was trembling in front of the black dragon before. By the way, unbeknownst to them, Xia had returned and tried to enter combat, only to be stopped by Yue, who had guessed Rinku's intentions. Currently, she watched him together with Yue by her side. Having been blown away at the beginning, she actually felt somewhat depressed. Yoma, not now Xia, this is Rinku's fight, let him be for now. Xia nodded at Yoma with a saddened expression, looking on at the fight unfolding in front of them. Rinku didn't immediately pull out Schlagen, Orkan, and the others because he thought it was a good chance to show off his fighting prowess to Aiko and the students. Although the black dragon was certainly sturdy and the power of one of its attacks was to be feared, it's easier to attack its huge body if one fought calmly, and its attacks were monotonous. So, it was possible for him to put into practice, no matter what, it won't hit. After all, it was an opponent Rinku could go easy on. Because he'd separate from Aiko and the students, to put a hard line so the church and kingdom wouldn't be relaxed when the heroes received the information from Aiko, he thought of showing off his true power to them. Because of that, although Rinku completely knocked down the pitiful black dragon, he held gratitude towards it in his mind. Even though there were cracks all over the place, none of the scales were completely crushed in the least. Truly significant durability. Because he remembered the scorpion-like thing, to be sure of it, he used mineral appraisal on the scales, and because there was no reaction, it seemed it was a mineral that couldn't be transmutated. Slowly, because he thought it was enough to make them understand his true strength, it was about time for the finishing blow. He slipped onto the black dragon's chest in an instant, and kicked with grand leg to roll him back towards its abdomen. Following that, he pulled out the pile bunker from the treasure box on the black dragon's abdomen. From the direction of Will and the others, he could hear a clamor but decided to ignore it. The anchors fired, and the arms fixed its location on the black dragon. Following that, he released Lightning Clad. The reason he chose the pile bunker was because he couldn't pull out all of its power inside the Raisin Great Dungeon, so he wanted to do an actual combat test. The stake which coated in Azanthium started to rotate intensely inside, and the pile bunker let out bright red sparks. If this kept up, the 4-ton stake would mercilessly end the black dragon's life. However, just like the proverb, a cornered rat will bite the cat, a wounded beast was something one should be cautious of. It was the same as the black dragon. Gugar quadruple A! Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Along with the black dragon's roar, a violent blast was generated towards all directions. It was an explosion made of pure magic power. In addition, using a moment to strengthen its body to the limit and the explosive power from its muscles, the anchors that pierced the ground to fix the pile bunker were raised, and at the same time it pried open the arms with its muscles. Following that, it turned around in an instant to shake Rinku off. Rinku instinctively stepped back. The heavy pile bunker that was on the verge of firing was turned to target the sky, and the stake that was accelerated to its max launched into the sky. A straight line that made ones narrow their eyes ascended through the sky, and Rinku, who put the pile bunker into the treasure box, confirmed the black dragon used its last struggle to move towards Will. Rinku, TCH, Xia. Xia, why yes. As he clicked his tongue towards this blunder, Rinku called Xia. Xia, having realized his intentions, jumped towards the sky using the rampart of ice, and let out a yell so she wouldn't be blown away this time. With the free fall and the outburst from the shot shell, she fell towards the black dragon just like a meteor. If it was the normal black dragon, it'd be able to avoid it, but the black dragon that was literally in its last struggle didn't have room for that. It was unable to avoid the hammer. Xia, who held the ultra-heavy Doryuken in a high stance, further poured her magic power to explosively increase its weight. Subsequently, it directly hit the crown of the black dragon's head without missing an inch as it let out a thundering sound. The black dragon's head sank to the ground, and its lower body floated as it stood on its hands because it was in the middle of a charge. After a moment of stillness, it finally fell down and made the earth tremor. Xia, who pulled out Doryuken from the black dragon's head that was on the ground, was surprised by what she saw. It was something natural. Although the black dragon's head was smashed and considerably cracked, it wasn't completely broken. It was truly dreadful durability. Rinku came towards the black dragon from behind. Also, the stake launched from the pile bunker pierced the ground between Rinku and the black dragon. Rinku knew the sprawled dragon wasn't dead by percepting its presence. Next, he suddenly recalled the talk with Motu about the Ryujin race from before. The one about kicking a dragon's ass. Hajime pulled out the stake that pierced the ground using Grand Arm and carried it on his shoulder as he positioned himself before the base of the black dragon's tail. Following that, he made a stance just like a javelin thrower. Naturally, in his hand was the pile bunker's stake. Everyone there was able to guess what Rinku was going to do, and their cheeks convulsed. Even though the scales were troublesome, it shouldn't be a good thing to thrust it there. Even though Yue, Xia, and the others floated expressions of horror towards Rinku's mercilessness, Rinku only thought of that as blowing wind. And finally, Rinku's pile bunker mightily pierced the black dragon's bleep, and Zuburi's sound resounded. At that moment, with its eyes immediately opened wide, the black dragon let out a heartbreaking scream as it woke up. In truth, having thrust half of the stake and using his fist to make it pierce further, as expected, even Rinku was surprised by the scream that obviously came from the black dragon, and he inadvertently removed his clasped fist. Dragon, ass is tilde, this one's ass is tilde. Because of the black dragon's grieving, painful, and somewhat excited tone, everyone let out a, what the hell is this? In amazement as they stared at the black dragon while stunned. Apparently, it didn't end as just a normal dragon subjugation. Chapter 37, TO Class. Dragon. It's pulling tilde, it's pulling out this one's ass tilde. On the mountainside of the northern mountain range, where trees were mowed down and the dried-up river was in ruins, a truly miserable voice rang out. It was a woman's voice. A voice that was not spoken, but rang out just like a wide-area version of telepathy. Because a dragon's vocal cords and mouth were incapable of speaking human words, it definitely used a method to transmit words through air vibrations. However, it was impossible for demonic beasts to speak in human words in the first place. Currently, the only confirmed case was the human-faced fish from somewhere. Even among the general population, there shouldn't be an existence such as a demonic beast capable of understanding human language. Furthermore, the existence of the black dragon right before their eyes was strange in and of itself. It was the first thing to ever endure so many shots of Hajime's railguns, excluding the ones in great dungeons. Moreover, although there were powerful demonic beasts that could fire such breath, they shouldn't exist around this place. If they lived here, then the danger should already be widely known. Therefore, Rinku deduced two possibilities as to why it's here. First, it was possible this black dragon came from further than the 5th mountain range, a completely unknown demonic beast. Following that, the other one was. Rinku, don't tell me, are you from the Ryujin race? Dragon, Mew. Indeed. This one came from the prideful Ryujin race. Isn't that great? Isn't that amazing? That's why, although this one wants to pull it out of this one's ass, this one's magic power is about to be cut off. If this one returns to original form in this situation, it'll be awful. This one's ass will. Rinku thought it couldn't be possible, but the black dragon replied, saying he was correct. Rinku was surprised in the edge of his mind. Just how many times since he coming to this world did he meet rare existences? Yue was from the vampire race that should have been annihilated in the wars 300 years ago. Xia was the current generation's atavism. Yoma's eyes were something not even the great liberators knew about, and right before his eyes was the black dragon who came from the Ryujin race, which was believed to have been annihilated more than 500 years ago. Yue, why are you in this place? While Rinki was still surprised, Yue continued to ask the black dragon. The Ryujin race was a legend even for Yue. She was interested in whether or not it was the only living one of its race, just like her. The light of curiosity dwelled in her eyes. Dragon, well, more importantly, the ass. The amount of magic power remaining is about. Please stop. Poking it is not good. The stimulation. The stimulation, tilde. Rinku, you dare to ignore Yue's question, ah. Rinku used his fist to drive in the stake sprouting from the black dragon's ass. With the shock directly spreading inside its body, the black dragon let out a scream as it writhed. Its dignified appearance as if it was a death god when they first met was just like an illusion because not even a bit of that remained. Rinku, just why would the should-be perished Ryujin race be here, attacking mere adventurers? I also want to hear about that. Normally, I'd just pierce your ass as is, but I'll delay that to hear your story. Well then, tell me briefly. Rinku thought the actions of this legendary Ryujin race were too unnatural. Normally he'd be merciless, but he slightly delayed that as he urged it to speak. And he continued to grind the stake with his hand. Dragon, ku, stop grinding it tilde nanoja tilde. I'll tell you. Shinobi, why does he keep pushing it in deeper? Yoma, look at the twisted smile on his face, that sick fuck is enjoying. Yoma smirked knowing he had struck a nerve in Rinku, who became agitated at the others. Rinku, Yoma, you have any idea of all the sadistic shit you've done since we got out of that labyrinth? Yoma threw his arm up at Rinku. Yoma, I have no idea what you're talking about. Rinku's action astonished the surrounding others. Because it couldn't talk if he kept it up, Rinku stopped the grinding. However, his hand was still affixed to the stake. The black dragon was relieved when the grinding stopped as it let out a sigh. Following that, it began to talk about its circumstances in a somewhat hurried tone. The captivated tone must be just their imagination. Dragon, this one was being manipulated by someone. This one didn't have any intention to attack thou. The temporary master ordered this one to find the young man over there and his companion and kill them. The black dragon turned its gaze towards Will. Will was twitching for a moment and his body trembled, then he firmly returned the black dragon's gaze. Having seen Rinku's fight, he must have settled something. Rinku, what do you mean? When the black dragon's talk was summarized, it became something like this. It seemed this black dragon went out of the Ryujin race's hidden town for a certain purpose. Its purpose was to investigate the visitors from another world. Although the details were omitted, there was a person with high magic perception inside the Ryujin race, and it seemed the person perceived a huge magic discharge and some things arrived to this world several months ago. Although the Ryujin race had a law which prevented from involving themselves on the surface stage, but just as expected, to leave the matter of unknown visitors as an unknown was something that would be dangerous, even for them. After some discussion, they decided to start the investigation. The black dragon before them left the hidden town with the purpose of investigation. Normally, it'd turn into human form after passing the mountain range, then it'd work hard in secretly gathering information, but it thought to rest a little before that, and it seemed to have taken a rest in the vicinity of first and second mountain range. Naturally, it used the Ryujin race's peculiar magic, dragon form, and turned into the black dragon because there were demonic beasts in the surroundings. And then a man completely covered in black robe from head to toe appeared in front of the sleeping black dragon. That man gradually gnawed on the thoughts and mind of the sleeping black dragon using a variety of brainwashing and suggestion magic from the dark magic system. Naturally, if that happened it'd usually counterattack. But the Ryujin race had a bad habit. That's right, it was the one that became the origin of that proverb. Ryujin race that entered deep sleep in dragon form wouldn't be easily awakened. However, it was as long as no one kicked its ass. Even so, Ryujin race boasted the toughness of their willpower, so it shouldn't be easy to manipulate it. Then, for how it was able to be perfectly manipulated. That was. Dragon, that man is frightening. His aptitude in dark magic can be called the level of a genius. That man continuously used magic for one full day. So no matter how strong this one is, this one couldn't endure it after all. It's the greatest mistake of this one's life. Was the feeling that came from the black dragon's sorrowful voice. However, Rinku just looked on with cold eyes. Dragon, in other words, having come here to investigate, how can you not notice magic being used for a full day, just because you're fast asleep? Everyone's eyes look somewhat foolish. The black dragon turned its gaze towards the day after tomorrow, and it continued its story as if nothing happened. By the way, the reason it knew it took a full day was because it was still conscious even after the completion of brainwashing, and heard the culprit grumbling. Afterwards, obeying the robed man, it helped brainwash the demonic beasts in the second mountain range. Then, on a certain day, the brutal army was moved to the first mountain range, and they encountered Will's party who were undertaking the investigation request. Having received the order to kill any witnesses, it chased after them. This one alone reported to the robed man. For some reason, it seemed it'd be bad if the fact he had brainwashed a lot of demonic beasts was revealed, so he ordered the Black Dragon to do a complete search. Then, by the time it had noticed it, it was already knocked down by Rinku, and panicked because she'd be dead if this kept up. That's why it exploded its magic power. Following that, at the time it was going to do suicide attack according to instructions ingrained in its brainwashed brain. Its consciousness was blown away after Shia's attack. In the next moment, its mind immediately woke up from an indescribable stimulation and impact to its ass. It didn't know whether it was the blow to its head or its ass that made it regain its senses. Will, stop playing around. Towards the Black Dragon who finished its story came a shaking voice that was desperately trying to suppress its fury. Everyone turned their glances towards that person. With his fists clenched, Wills aimed his anger-filled eyes towards the Black Dragon. Will, just because you were manipulated, Gale was, Navarre was, Lento was, Wasley was, Kurt was killed, but that couldn't be helped, you say. Apparently, he was angry because he understood why the adventurers were killed. He raised a voice filled with fury towards the Black Dragon. The confronted Black Dragon didn't raise any rebuttal. It just received all of Will's words with calm eyes as it gazed at him. He was unable to stomach that attitude. Will, in the first place, your story can't be proven to be true. You most likely made it up because you didn't want to die. Dragon, what was spoken just now is the truth. For the Ryujin race's pride doesn't allow this one to lie. Now, Will tried to argue vehemently. But, Yue and Yoma intervened. Yue, surely, it didn't lie. Yoma, she knows if she does, she'll be killed, so why risk it? Having glanced at the snapped Will, Yue began to talk as she looked at the Black Dragon. Yue, the Ryujin race is noble and honest. I've lived much longer from everyone here. That's why I am more familiar with the legend of the Ryujin race. This one said, for its pride. That's why, it is surely not a lie. Furthermore, I know if someone has the eyes of a liar. Yue slightly moved her gaze away from the Black Dragon, as she looked at the distant sky. Surely, she was reminded of the event 300 years ago. For the aloof princess, her surroundings had set her up, and remembering the result, surely there were a lot of lies involved. Even the most familiar person to her could be called liars. The result of her constantly looking away from that fact was the betrayal. Therefore, for Yue, who had experienced the bitterness called the study of life, her eyes were sensitive to liars. Although the reason she entrusted herself when she first met Rinku and Yoma was because there was no other way, and although Rinku never lied to her, when she was reminded of that time, her sensitivity to liars might have been the biggest contributing factor after all. Dragon, Fumu, for someone to still know of the Ryujin race's ideals. No, didn't thou say a long time ago? For someone to still know the ideals of the existence called the Ryujin race, the Black Dragon's tone was somewhat joyous. Yue, NN. I am a survivor of the vampire race. 300 years ago, I was heard the Ryujin race was the ideal example of nobility. Dragon, wow, vampire races. Moreover 300 years ago. Indeed, although this one heard they were dead, thou art the vampire princess. Surely thy name is. Apparently, the Black Dragon was alive for more or less the same amount of time as Yue. Moreover, its words implied that it knew of what had happened in the world. Even now, they might still hide their identities and are investigating the world. But, the Black Dragon seemed surprised that the vampire princess had survived. The surrounding, Will, Aiko, and the students were also looked at Yue with eyes of astonishment. Yue, that's my name. It's the name I got from my most important person. So, I'd like you to call me that. Yue gestured as though she were embracing something closely with both hands as her cheeks blushed faintly. For Yue, the Ryujin race was an existence that should be taken as an example. So, the edge of her spoken words were filled with respect. That feeling must also have been involved in how she stopped Will's disparagement. In Yue's surroundings, an aura of happiness somehow drifted around. Because of the abrupt love talk, the female students wore expressions as though they had eaten something sweet, while the male students were blushing because of Yue's charm as they looked at her. Even Will seemed to have lost some of his vigor. Yoma smirked seeing this and spoke up. Yoma, it seems like you've got some fans, Yue. However, Will continued to speak because he still regretted what had happened to the senior adventurers. Will, even so, that doesn't change the fact that it killed them, but even I don't know what should be done. Even so. Gale was going to propose when this job ended, their regrets. He knew in his head that the Black Dragon's words weren't a lie. However, he couldn't help but blame it. His heart just couldn't accept it. Inside Rinku's mind, once again, a splendid flag was raised high, with weird admiration. Then he recalled the locket pendant they had picked up on the way. Rinku, Will, is this the Gale's belonging? As he said that, he threw the locket pendant to Will. Will received it, he looked at it, then he smiled as if he was truly happy. Will, this is my locket pendant. I thought I had lost it, but you picked it up. Thank you very much. Rinku, ha. It's yours. Will, yes, it's not a mistake because there's Mama's photograph. Rinku, Mama. His expectation came off splendidly, and the answer even made Rinku's cheeks cramp inadvertently. Because the woman in the photograph should be in the first half of her 20s, he was doubtful, but he heard. Will, after all, the photograph of Mama in her youth is the best. As Will answered as if it was some kind of divine revelation. Everyone there realized, Mama con ha, as they wore subtle expressions. The females looked more and more subtle, however, Yoma on the other hand. Yoma, you're fucking gross dude. By the way, Gale's other party seemed to be a man. Following that, Gale's full name was Gale Homoluka. It was just as to say that the name influenced the body. Maybe because he regained his mother's photograph, Will considerably calmed down. Its effectiveness was truly an unknown. But, even if he was calmed down, his grudge and pain didn't disappear. Will, calmly, insisted to kill the Black Dragon. Moreover, even though it said it was brainwashed, he reasoned that it was completely faking it. His main reason should be revenge. Then, as if to repent, the Black Dragon spun its words that contained guilt in its voice. Dragon, even if this one was manipulated, it is true that this one is guilty for plucking the precious life of people. To make up for it, this one will obediently receive the judgment. However, this one wants you to delay that for a while. At the very least, until that dangerous man is stopped, that man is trying to make an army of demonic beasts. Although Ryujin race's law doesn't allow any interference against the continent's fate, this one was responsible. This one can't just leave it. This one no, it is just this one's selfishness. But, please somehow overlook that. Hearing the Black Dragon words, everyone in that place was surprised when they heard about the army of demonic beasts. Naturally, everyone's gazes focused on Rinku. These members were naturally looked to their leader. Actually, because Rinku was the one who stopped piercing the Black Dragon, they naturally entrusted the decision to him. Yoma wore a serious expression as he spoke to Rinku. Yoma, you thinking what I'm thinking? Rinku nodded before answering. Rinku, well, I don't really know about your circumstance. But, it'll be a troublesome, so I'll ignore it. Die as an apology. He swung the fist of his artificial arm as he said that. Dragon, wait. Thou, with the flow of the talk, thou shouldn't have done the finishing blow as if no discussion is necessary. Please. This one will apologize without fail. This one don't mind whatever thou do when that matter is over. That's why delay it for now. The afterlife will. Rinku continued to swing his fist as he ignored the Black Dragon's words with cold eyes. However, he couldn't finish that. At the moment he swung it, Yue clung onto Hajimi's neck while Yoma grabbed onto his arm. Surprising him, Yue whispered to Rinku's ears as she instinctively held him. Yue, are you going to kill? Rinku, eh? Well, we were trying to kill each other. Yue, but, it's not an enemy. Killing intent and malice were never turned towards us. It was deprived of its will. Apparently, Yue didn't want the Black Dragon to die. For Yue, Ryujin race was something she yearned for, so she respected it. Moreover, even though he said they were trying to kill each other, from the beginning, the Black Dragon never turned its killing intent and malice towards Rinki and the others. They understood the reason now. With its will literally deprived, it only did as ordered just like a machine. Even so, there was no change with how they tried to kill each other. However, in the first place, Will was the only one in the Black Dragon's eyes, and the reason it battled Rinku was because the Black Dragon confronted Rinku's intent to kill. Further saying, Rinku would be inconvenienced if Will was dead, so certainly it was an enemy because it aimed at Will, but the one behind the Black Dragon was the robed man. Then, if he were to talk about who the enemy was, it'd be more likely to be that man. Also, there was a reason for her to stop him. Yue knew Rinku's stance. But, in Yue's eyes, enemy that should be killed and the black dragon weren't the same thing. Because she was the ruler of the vampire race, having experienced such things, her eyes wouldn't be mistaken about a person. In Yue's eyes, there were no essence of enemy inside the black dragon's mind. For Yue, she at least didn't want Rinku to kill things other than the enemy. After all, Yue, if one compromised on the important rule imposed to themselves, one would be broken. Wouldn't your rule changed if you killed the black dragon? She was worried that Rinku would be broken if he killed things beside the enemy. Having received Yue's words, Rinki could guess her mind, and he thought more and more carefully if the black dragon was the enemy as he slightly inclined his neck. Even if it was manipulated, Rinku was not so naive to consider that in a fight to death, he would have most likely killed it without mercy. However, after it regained its mind and the brainwashing was dissolved, to purposely execute it with enemies will be killed, he thought, isn't that a deviation? Rinku then turned to Yoma. Rinku, and what about you? Why did you stop me? Yoma, well, you were too busy being a sadist, you didn't see the intrigue in Yue's eyes about this masochistic dragon, someone had to make sure she stayed happy. This immediately pissed Rinku off. Rinku, what the hell is with you today, man? As she clung on Rinku's neck, Yue was watching him closely and looked like they'd kiss at any moment, and having thought of that, unexpectedly, it spoke with a quiet, desperate tone. Dragon, this one is sorry to intrude on such good atmosphere, but even if thou feel lost, at the very least could thou pull out the stake from this one's ass. If this keep up, this one will be dead no matter what will happen. Rinku, NN. What do you mean? Dragon, having received the external thing while in dragon form, at the time this one returned to original form, it had influenced the body as is. Try imagining it. The scene of this stake piercing a woman's ass. Do you think this one will survive that? Everyone in the area imagined the scene that the black dragon said, then, tilde, their expressions cramped. Especially the females, they hold their butts as they turn pale. Yoma, ya no. Yue, don't even say it Yoma. Dragon, well, although the dragon form could be maintained using magic power, this one's magic power almost exhausted. In a minute, although it isn't bad to go to a new world, please pardon this one from that kind of death. The afterlife without it unplugged. Somewhat, its words seemed anxious, and its tone weakened as if its limit was truly close, and apparently Rinku didn't have more time to think. Hajime embraced Yue with his right arm as Yoma let go of his left, and decided rather than hesitating, he'd go along with his partner and friend's words as is. For people, they wouldn't be able to understand their own selves. That's why, it wouldn't be a mistake to choose the direction where his trusted partner wouldn't feel uneasy. Having thought that, Rinku carefully put his hand on the stake which was stuck in the black dragon's ass. Following that, he used his strength to pull it out. Dragon, Han. Please do it slowly. This one's still in Ix, a Foon. Yeah, how intense. If this, on. Coming, something is coming tilde. Because it stuck hard inside, he twisted it for so many times, and he put considerable power while twisting it to pull it out, but somehow the black dragon began to let out a captivated voice as it panted. Rinku ignored that voice and pulled it out without any mercy. Dragon, Ahii! Exclamation mark. Amazing, even though this one said to do it gently, to be treated without any mercy. This is the first time. As the black dragon muttered unknown things, immediately, its body completely wrapped with cocoon-like, jet-black magic power, and its big size began to decrease. Following that, after it reached the size of a human, the magic power immediately disappeared. In the place of the black-colored magic power was something collapsed on its feet, and while using one hand to support its body, the other hand was holding its butt. With blushing cheeks, it was a black-haired, golden-eyed beautiful girl. Her glossy, straight, black hair reached her waist and her cheeks dyed bright red. She breathed roughly as if she was in a trance. Her appearance was in the first half of her 20s, and her height might be around 170 centimeters. With a splendid proportion one could be proud of. Every time she breathed, a pair of hills were intensely shook as they peeped from inside the clothes collar that became disordered as it hanged on her, and it looked like they came out at any moment. If Sheer was melon, the black dragon was watermelon. The black dragon's real form was a captivating beauty and the males were especially reacted grandly to that. The 3 male students in adolescent were somewhat slouching. If this keeps up they'd likely go on all fours. The female students were looking at them with eyes as if they were no different from cockroaches. Dragon, Ha ha, this one's still alive. Although there is still a sense of discomfort on the ass, this one's whole body is hurting in all places. Ha ha, for pain to be this sweet. The black dragon wore a dangerous expression and let out a dangerous words for some reason. Then she pulled herself together as she immediately straightened her sitting position and began to introduce herself in such cold atmosphere. Still, she sometimes panted, ha ha, and messed various things, but dragon, this one have trouble thou. With all of this one's might, this one apologize. This one's name is Tio Class. A person that came from the last tribe of Ryujin race, Class tribe. The Black Dragon introduced herself as Tio Class. Next, she talked on how the Black Road Man was going to attack the town with an army of brainwashed demonic beasts. Their number had reached around 3,000 to 4,000. Also, from the second mountain range, the leaders of groups of demonic beasts were already brainwashed, so he could use the groups more efficiently as his subordinates. When she said about controlling demonic beasts, it reminded Rinku and the others about the new power of the one called demon race in this world. Maybe because Aiko and the students also thought of that, they guessed the Black Road Man was actually from demon race. However, their guess was easily refuted by Tio. After all, the Black Road Man was black-haired, black-eyed human, and still at the age of a boy. Moreover, from the mouth of the Black Dragon called Tio, who was made as a subordinate to him, came the settling words. That person introduced himself as a hero, with a tone filled with considerably grudge against the so-called hero. Rinku and Yoma glanced at each other, as if the guess was just confirmed. A black-haired, black-eyed human boy, moreover he was someone with genius-like talent on dark magic. With this much hints, a certain person came to their minds. Aiko and the students muttered, that can't be, at the same time as they showed mixed and complex expressions. Though it didn't limit it to pure black, they said as they didn't want it to believe it. Following that, the unmanned probes finally discovered a certain place where the demonic beast's army was. They numbered. Rinku, that's not at the level of 3,000 to 4,000, you know. It's at the level which one more digit should be added. Everyone opened their eyes wide after they heard Rinku's report. Moreover, the army had started their march. The direction was surely towards Owl Town. As they'd came out of the mountain in a half day, and they'd likely reach the town in a day. Aiko, we must quickly inform the town. Tell him to take shelter, called the rescue from Imperial Capital, then. Because it was a serious situation, Aiko desperately tried to arrange her words in confusion. No matter if the enemies were tens of thousand demonic beasts, even with their cheat-like specs, the students carried a trauma. Aiko didn't have any combat experience, while Wool, who inspired to be an adventurer, and Tio, who exhausted her magic power, wouldn't even become an obstacle for the enemies. That's why, just as Aiko had said, they must quickly inform the town of the emergency, then it'd be the best to run away until the rescue from the Imperial Capital came. And, among everyone who was shaken, Wool suddenly muttered. Wool, if it's Rinku something can be. With those words, everyone looked at Rinku. Their eyes were dyed in expectation of the possibility. Having stared at like that, Rinku shook her hand gloomily, and replied with a feeling of abandonment. Rinku, don't look at me with such eyes. Our work is only to take Wool back to Uran. As if I will take the object of protection into a war. That's why you should stop that and immediately return to the town to report. The students and Wool could feel the antipathy from Rinky's unmotivated attitude. For a brief moment they thought maybe Yoma could help, but then they realized it's Yoma. Among them, Aiko asked a question with an expression as if she remembered something. Aiko, Rinku, did you find the Black Road Man? Rinku, NN. Well, although I am checking the group since a while ago, I didn't see any human shadow. Having heard Rinku's words, Aiko looked down again. Following that, Potsuri, she said she wanted to remain here to confirm if the Black Road Man was Shimizu Yukitoshi, who currently missing or not. It was because Aiko always thought of her student. She'd likely unable to do anything if the current situation was caused by her own student, after all. However, they couldn't leave Aiko at the place where several 10,000s of demonic beasts were, so Shinobi and the students desperately tried to persuade Aiko. But, Aiko still hesitated. Among them, then how if Rinku and Yoma also goes? They began to think like that. Already, Rinku thought the talk about returning and not returning as they stopped in this place as a hassle, so he turned a cold look towards Aiko. Rinku, remain here if you want. We are going to take Will along to the town. As he said that, he gripped Will's collar and dragged him as he began to descend the mountain. Will, Aiko, and the students tried to object in a panic. Their reason, they couldn't leave the army of demonic beasts as is, they wanted to confirm who the Black Robed Man was, and the army could be defeated by Rinku and Yoma. Rinku let out a sigh and looked back at Aiko and the others with somewhat irritated look. Rinku, didn't I already said it? Our job is to protect Will. Taking along the protection target into battle against that army is something I won't do. For example, even if I have to do it, the obstacle would be too big and it'd be a battle of annihilation for me alone. By no means would I want to suffer like that. Furthermore, if you go to confirm the Black Robed Man's identity, then you will report this matter to the town. If by chance we are annihilated, the town will be devoured by a surprise attack, you know. By the way, the magic-driven two-wheeler can only be moved by me, so it'd be impossible for the others to return earlier if I fight, K. Also, Yoma ain't gonna help you in any way. So don't even bother. Yoma, Rinku buddy, I'd hope they're smart to know better. Having heard the logical counter to their demands, Aiko and the others were speechless as they pointed how futile their demands were. Tio, well, just as Mas. Kohan, just as he said. Because this one has exhausted her magic power, this one can do nothing. So, the top priority is to inform the town about the emergency. If this one rests for one day, this one will recover considerably. Because everyone kept silent, Tio spoke to back him up. Just a little, she called Rinku in a strange way, but it must have been their imagination. Aiko also knew that it'd be the best to temporarily stop worrying about Shimizu, and she decided to give priority to secure the safety of the students by her side. Tio was unable to move due to magic power exhaustion, so Rinku dragged her by her neck root. Actually, the male students said someone should carry Tio on their backs as they grandly scattered sparks among themselves, but that was rejected by the female students. And because Tio herself have wished it, she was somehow carried by Rinku. However, rather than on his back, it was Rinku's characteristic to not hold her. As he frowned because it was a hassle, he suddenly gripped Tio's foot and began to drag her. Because of the protests from Aiko and the others, he reluctantly changed it to gripping her neck root, and dragged her just like before. No matter what Rinku did, it resulted in Tio, who somehow floated an ecstatic expression that made the surroundings shuddered, and they descended the mountain as is. The party, with Dark Cloud and an army behind them, rushed to return to the Owl Town. Chapter 38, Aiko's Talk. The magic-driven four-wheeler dashed out at faster speed than when they'd departed, but the land-leveling function couldn't keep up, so Tio, who was crucified on the ceiling, received the impact. The male students in the carrier received a mixer-like shaking. Yoma and Shinobi were back atop of Yoma's giant four-winged bird, Yoma looking down at Tio, enjoying the show. Then, at that time, they discovered the fully armed bodyguard knights who fiercely drove their horses in the area between the town of Owl and Northern Mountain Range. Rinku's farsight could see David in the lead wearing an Oni-like expression, while Chase, who was beside him, couldn't hide his frustration as they swiftly rode. Having ran for a while, they discovered a black object that created a clamor as it moved. It was natural for them to think what they saw was a demonic beast. With their weapons drawn, they changed their formation. Their response speed was fast, and indeed, it was clear how they were praised as the VIP's bodyguards. In particular, even if he was going to be attacked, Rinku nor Yoma didn't have any problem to just charge past them, but Aiko didn't know that because she thought it'd be a serious matter if Tio, who raised a bewitching and charming scream, and the pale male students were exposed to such attacks. She showed her face through the sunroof and desperately waved her hands as she shouted at David to notice her. As they drew near, David tried to invoke his magic. He narrowed his eyes as he could see a human-like figure suddenly spring up above the black object that came in high speed. Normally, he'd do a preemptive strike as there was nothing to argue about, but something inside him told him to stop. It could be said that it was his sixth sense exclusive to Aiko, the so-called high-sensitivity Aiko sensor. With his hand held out, he sent his subordinates the signal to stop their attacks. Although the subordinates were suspicious about it, they became wide-eyed as they heard the familiar voice from the human-like thing that grew out of the top of the black object as it approached them. David had already displayed an expression as if he couldn't believe it and muttered, "David, Aiko. For a moment, don't tell me Aiko's lower half was eaten by that demonic beast." As David and the others became pale, but Aiko waved her hands energetically and said with a voice full of life, "Aiko, David, it's me. Please don't attack us, Tilda." They understood that they had misunderstood the situation, and they let out joyful expressions at this reunion because the one on the black object was undoubtedly the person they held dear. As if he was drunk on the situation, David greatly spread his arms with an expression that said, "Come. Jump into my arms." Chase and the others at his sides also spread their arms as if saying, "Jump to me." Seeing the knights' appearances with their hands spread, Rinku looked displeased. Although Aiko and the students thought Rinku and Yoma would obviously stop before David and the knights, they suddenly poured more magic power, and they accelerated and sped up. Because they were at a distance where deceleration was absolutely necessary, the knights became stupefied when the black object and giant bird accelerated further, and moved away in panic. Aiko, Rinku. Why did you do such a dangerous thing? Aiko became angry, getting back into the vehicle and fiercely protested against Rinku. Rinku, there's no reason to stop, mused Aiko. If we stop, they'd likely ask about the situation. Do we have such time? We'll explain the situation in town after all, so there's no need to do it twice, right? Aiko, that's true. She was somewhat convinced. The things about them slipping out without permission and Rinku's four-wheeler along with Yoma's animal summon would certainly take too much time, so Aiko shut her mouth. Yue, who got back into her seat, drew her face to Rinku's ear and asked him. Yue, real intention. Rinku, those smiling knights made me feel unpleasant. If I got that feeling, imagine how Yoma would feel about them. Yue, same here. By the way, right behind the Aiko poking her face out of the sunroof, was Tio tied up on the vehicle. An expression of ecstasy floated across her face because her damaged body continued to be stimulated by the vibration of vehicle's frame, but it seemed the knights and Aiko didn't see her. In addition, when they arrived at the town, Yue, who knew of Tio's disgraceful behavior, said, Yue, is this the Ryujin race? As she raised a slightly shocked expression. Since the first time Tio released her dragon form at the northern mountain range, she was in a subtle mental state and seemed to feel the pain. That's why Yue finally broke free from her illusion-like respect and yearning towards the Ryujin race. Arriving at the town of Arl, the party calmly walked, while Aiko and the others were running towards the town headman's place. Rinku thought of parting with Aiko and the students here and quickly taking Will back to Uran, but he reluctantly followed them because Will had started running before Aiko and the students. The town was full of liveliness. The dishes came in wide varieties and abundantly, and the town was near a lake. It was the location where people and nature gathered. No one would ever dream that this town would be trampled by an army of demonic beasts in a day. The party were looking at such a town, remembering they didn't have any meals since yesterday, so they advanced towards the town hall as they enjoyed skewers from a stall. The party finally arrived at the town hall, and the place was already in a commotion. The branch head of Arl's town guild, town executives, and the priests from the church were gathered and in a state of uproar. All of their expressions showed they couldn't believe and didn't want to believe the information brought by Aiko, the students, and Will as they closely questioned them. Normally, they'd just put it off as nonsense from a madman if they heard tomorrow the town would be annihilated, but they were words that came from Aiko, the God's apostle. And also known as the Goddess of Good Harvest. That was followed by the recent fact that the demon race was capable of manipulating demonic beasts, so they couldn't just ignore this information. By the way, from the discussion inside the vehicle, Aiko and the students had agreed to hide Tio's true form, and there was a possibility of Shimizu Yukitoshi being the mastermind behind this. It's undesirable for the Ryujin race's existence to be exposed, so Tio asked him to stay silent about this, and the mastermind's identity was just a possibility, so Aiko didn't want to carelessly convey it. Aiko somehow or another agreed to conceal the information about the existence of the Ryujin race because the race is something half taboo for the Church of Saints, and it'd only cause chaos followed by the formation of a subjugation unit. Within such commotion, Rinku came towards Will. He only thought of the surrounding chaos as blowing wind. Rinku, oi, Will. Don't just run all of a sudden. Remember that you're under my protection. If you're done reporting, let's quickly go back to Uran. With Rinku's words, Will, Aiko and the others were surprised as they looked at Rinku. The others, the town leaders, seemed to feel displeased as they looked at Rinku interrupting the emergency discussion, as if saying, who the hell is this? Will, what are you saying? Rinku. It's a time of emergency now, right? Don't tell me, you're going to desert the town. Will started arguing with Rinku with an expression as if he couldn't believe what he'd just said, and Rinku replied with an expression as if he expected this hassle. Rinku, deserting or whatever it is, in the end, aren't you also going to abandon the town, take shelter, and wait for rescue to come? I'm already aware of this town's defenses from sightseeing. If you want to take shelter, it'd be okay to go to Uran. For a while now you've only talked about quickly evacuating the people. Will, that's right. But, I can't just run away by myself in such a serious situation. Even I should have something I can help with. Even Rinku, please cooperate too. Rinku, do I need to speak more clearly to make you understand? My job is to take you back to Uran. I don't have anything to do with this town. Listen, I won't hear your opinion. If you still don't want to go, I'll just crush your limbs and drag you back. Will, WHTH that's. From Rinku's atmosphere, Will guessed those words were serious as he turned pale. His expression said he couldn't believe it. Rinku, who could overwhelm the dragon that easily annihilated veteran adventurers like Gale's party, looked a little like a hero to Will. That's why even if he was merciless, Will unconditionally believed Rinku would somehow help the townspeople under such an emergency. That's why Will felt betrayed by the cold words thrown out by Rinku. As he was at a loss for words, Will unconsciously distanced himself from Rinku, but Rinku decided to approach him. Because of such a strange atmosphere, the surrounding people could only alternate looks between Rinku and Will without moving. Then someone suddenly moved and blocked Rinku. It was Aiko. She immediately looked up straight at Rinku with a resolute expression. Aiko, Rinku. If it's you, can't you do something about the army of demonic beasts? No, you can do it, right? Aiko's voice carried conviction. He can do something if it's Rinku. In other words, she declared he would be able to save the town. With those words, the surrounding town leaders started to make noise. If they were to believe the reported threat from Aiko and the others, the enemies were tens of thousands of demonic beasts. Furthermore, they gathered from several mountain range areas. That meant it was on the scale of a war. Consequently, an individual wouldn't be able to influence the war. That's common sense. To overturn such common sense, there was a special existence even among the ones summoned from another world, that's a hero. But, it didn't really mean he could win alone against an army. What it meant was leading the human race and together with his companions, simply using quantity. That's why they couldn't believe the boy in front of them who wasn't even a hero could do something, even if those words came from Aiko. Even if they were words from the goddess of good harvest. Towards Aiko's powerful gaze, Rinku waved his hands gloomily as he tried to deceive her by denying it. Rinku, no, Ms. Aiko. Isn't that impossible? Aren't there more than 40,000 of them? It'll be very, very. Aiko, but at that time in the mountain, you didn't say it was impossible, when Will asked if you could do something about it. Also, didn't you say, the obstacle would be too big and it'd become a fight till the last one standing for me alone? To put it plainly, there's a possibility it'd become a fight till the last one standing, right? Did I hear it wrong? Rinku, what good memory. Yoma smirked. Yoma, she's got you Rinku buddy. Because of Aiko's good memory, Rinku's face distorted as he awkwardly said that. He didn't regret what he'd said. Aiko requested with a more serious expression to Rinku, who averted his face. Aiko, Rinku. Can't you both somehow lend us your power? If this keeps up, not only will this beautiful town be destroyed, a lot of lives will surely be lost. Rinku, how unexpected. I thought you held students as your top priority. Even all the things you've done were inevitably because there's the possibility to be able to return you even a bit earlier, right? Nevertheless, for the sake of unfamiliar people, you're trying to send a student to his death. You don't have the intention, but it's as though you're just like those guys from the church who tried to spur us to war, you know. Rinku's words were full of ridicule, but Aiko was still the same. Her expression was not the worried expression from just a minute ago, it was a resolute and teacher-like expression. There were priests from the church who listened to Rinku and Aiko's conversation nearby. They frowned and watched him with narrowed eyes because Rinku's words were full of disdain towards the church. That's why Aiko didn't move from her spot as she straightened her gaze and posture. Aiko, if there's a method to return to our original world, I'd quickly return the students, and my feelings haven't changed even now. But, if that's impossible, then, we are living in this world now, the words we exchanged and the people who smiled at us, at the very least I don't want to abandon the people within my reach. Thinking like this is natural as a human. Of course, because Sensei is a teacher, my priority will not change even under such an emergency. Aiko spun her words of confirmation one by one. Aiko, Rinku, you're calm even now, that's why I think you and Yoma have experienced something beyond our imagination, to become like this. That's why I feel that you have the composure to think about other people. The words of a teacher who couldn't be by your side when you were most hurt, might be too light for you. But, please hear me out, somehow. Rinku kept quiet as is, and he returned Aiko's gaze, urging her to continue. Aiko, Rinku. Last night, didn't you say you'll absolutely return to Japan? Then, Rinku. Are you going to return to Japan with everyone important to you except the ones who obstruct you? Are you going to leave everyone who becomes a hindrance to you? Will you be able to live like that in Japan? When you return to Japan, will you change your way of life? The reason I didn't want the students to actively fight is because I am concerned if they would be able to return to their old lives when they return to Japan. Killing is. I don't want you to become accustomed to that. Yoma poked his head up and begun to pay attention to the conversation between Rinku and Aiko. Aiko, Nagumo-kun, you have your own sense of values, your choice for the future is your own. In addition, you don't have the obligation to hear the words from your teacher's mouth. But I think that no matter what kind of future you choose, the way of living which casts others away, other than those important to you, is a truly lonely one. Surely, that way of living will not make you and the ones important to you happy. If you wish for happiness, at least for those within your reach, please don't forget how to sympathize with them. From the very beginning, that's the important and priceless thing you once had, so don't throw it away. One by one, Aiko spun words filled with her feelings, and she tried to convey all of them in front of Rinku. The leaders of the town and even the students heard Aiko's words in silence. Especially the students. They looked down as if they were scolded as they felt bad they got carried away by their power. At the same time, because Aiko was serious about bringing him back even now, and even thought about how they'd live afterwards. With newfound feelings, they could be seen smiling happily as if something tickled them. For Rinku, even if he crossed the worlds, no matter what the situation would be and even if the students had completely changed, Aiko, who didn't even deviate from a teacher, made him smile wryly inside. It wasn't out of contempt, but admiration. Aiko was treated special because of her rare value. She didn't experience Rinki or Yoma's hardships, so he'd easily refute her with, even though you don't know anything. Or, don't spout things as if you know them. In a way it's just like what Aiko had said, her words were light. But, Rinku couldn't do that. Even now the teacher was looking straight at him, so to refute them as light words would be too unsightly. Moreover, Aiko hadn't even once pressured him about the right thing to do. All of her words were only for the sake of wishing for the boy's future and happiness. Rinku immediately turned his gaze towards Yue at Aiko's side. Yue somehow looked at Aiko as if feeling nostalgic. However, when she noticed Rinku's gaze, she immediately matched him straight with a serene gaze. Her eyes said that she'd adhere to whatever answer Rinku gave. Inside the abyss, she and Yoma were his precious persons who held his humanity right before he fell. That's why Rinku certainly wished for her happiness. He thought it'd be okay if he did it by himself, but if you were to believe Aiko's words, Rinku's way of life wouldn't be able to make Yue happy. When he changed his gaze further, he found the rabbit-eared girl who looked at him worriedly. Towards his world which narrowed to only Yue and him, she was the girl who, along with Yoma and their banter with one another, brought liveliness. No matter how many times they treated her unkindly, she desperately chased after him curiously, and now she was just like Yue, someone he loved as a friend and companion. For them to accept Shia, didn't it bring happiness to Yue? For Rinku and Yoma, this world was like a prison. A cage that obstructed them from returning to his hometown. Therefore, it was extremely difficult for him to accept the people and everything in this world. Inside the abyss, he discarded everything for the sake of returning. It wouldn't be an easy thing to change the sense of values carved in his mind which wouldn't forgive those who obstructed him. But even if it was difficult to sympathize with other people, he could do it. As a result, his precious things. If that would bring happiness to Yue and Shia, they wouldn't be that stingy to pitch in and help. Rinku didn't agree to all of Aiko's words. Even so, it was a serious scolding from his teacher. To disregard it as nonsense would be too childish. With this time's rampage, the possibility of the trouble of their existence being published would suddenly become bigger, but it'd be okay to work hard as just Aiko's student. Whatever he chose, he already knew he'd be marked sooner or later. He had prepared to strike all of the troublesome things. He decided not to respect this world. That's why it wouldn't be bad to flashily show off his power. Yoma walked over and places his arm on his shoulder, looking up at him. Yoma, so, what's the plan? With that, he thought a while for an excuse, then Rinku looked at Aiko again. Rinku, Aiko, no matter what happens after this, are you still our teacher? What Rinku implied was if she'd be his ally. Aiko, of course. Towards that, Aiko replied without hesitating. Rinku, whatever our decision. That's, even if the result isn't what you had hoped. Aiko, that doesn't have to be said. My role isn't to decide the student's future. I'll just help to make a better decision. You have heard my talk, so I won't refute your decision. Rinku watched Aiko for a while to confirm whether there was a lie in her words. For him to intentionally have such commitment was because he himself didn't want to become hostile towards Aiko. After he confirmed there's neither lie nor deception in Aiko's eyes, Rinku and Yoma turned towards the entrance. Yue and Xia immediately followed after him, their gaze lingering on Yoma as if they knew something the others didn't. Aiko, be boys. Seeing such a Rinku, Aiko panically called him. Rinku looked back, he shrugged his shoulders and replied, having been beaten by Aiko's teacher style. Rinku, as expected, to take on a huge crowd of tens of thousands as opponents, I'll need some time to prepare. Continue your discussion without me. Aiko, Rinku. Aiko's face shone because of Rinku's reply. Rinku could only smile wryly at such an Aiko. Rinku, it is advice from the best teacher I've ever known. Moreover, if it's connected to these girls' happiness, I only need to consider it a bit. Anyway, I'll just kick those guys around for now. As he said that, he patted Yue and Yoma's shoulder, then once again he turned his heels and went out of the room. Yue and Xia raised a truly joyful atmosphere, and began to run after the two in small steps. Pattern, the sound of the door being closed, the leaders of the town who shut their mouth after being drowned by the atmosphere between Aiko and Hajime, and immediately asked about the situation from Aiko. Aiko, whose shoulders were shaken, stared at the door which they went out of. Her face didn't transmit any joy towards them. What she said to Rinku were Aiko's true feelings, that their way of life was a sad one. But, in the end, there's no denying that she made an important student confront an army of demonic beasts. While she said she didn't want him to grow accustomed to using their power, she was conscious of the contradiction she'd made by sending him off to fight. She thought she wanted him to rethink their way of life, but she also thought of wanting to help the townspeople of Al. As a result, both of them seemed to be fulfilled, but she wanted to search for better ways. Aiko secretly let her shoulders droop because of her helplessness as a teacher. She prayed for all of her students to not lose their hearts, and to return to their homes, but Aiko's wish couldn't be fulfilled. After hearing Rinku's story last night, Aiko herself felt that her wishes were already just an illusion. However, she couldn't stop wishing for it. Surrounded by the leaders who raised a ruckus and the students who looked at her in respect and affection, Aiko didn't realize she let out a sigh. By the way, Tio, who had come to the town hall with the party, muttered. Tio, although this one is an important witness, is this neglect play, as expected of Mars? Tio spoke with a flushed expression, and she was naturally ignored. Chapter 39, Goddess Advent. Ul Town. The mountain range area in the north and Aldare Lake in the west brought abundant resources to the town. Currently, the town was encircled by an outer wall that didn't exist last night as the town was wrapped in a strange atmosphere. This outer wall was something Rinku instantly built. Using the magic-driven two-wheeler, he ran around the town's outer circumference and transmuted the outer wall without leveling the land. First of all, the wall's height was only 4 meters tall because it was the range limit of Rinku's transmutation. It was not a really tall one. If it was a big-sized demonic beast, it would easily be able to climb over the wall. Tentatively, there's no problem because it made the people feel better in such an emergency. To begin with, they wouldn't really depend on such a wall. The thing about the approaching army of tens of thousands of demonic beasts was already known to the townspeople. Considering the demonic beast's movement speed, the vanguard would arrive right before evening. Naturally, the townspeople panicked. People began to insult the town leaders, including the mayor. Others cried and collapsed on where they were. People closely embraced the person next to them. Some scrambled to escape even among companions, and there were those who started to blame each other. Tomorrow, this town would be destroyed and they knew they'd lose their lives if they stayed here, so they didn't have the luxury to remain calm. The way they were acting couldn't be helped. But there was someone who made them regain their composure. It was Aiko. Finally arriving at the town, the guard knights received the briefing and they shouted Goddess of Good Harvest. With her dignified appearance showing she didn't fear anything, coupled with her originally high popularity made the people regain their composure for now. Hachiyama Aiko, in a certain way, was more hero-like than a hero. The people who regained their composure divided into two groups. Those who wouldn't throw away their hometown and would share the same fate as this town, the stay-behind group. The other one was as planned in the beginning, escaping to safety until rescue came, the shelter group. Even among the stay-behind group, a lot of women and children were put into the shelter. They believed Aiko's words that the demonic beasts would be repulsed, and they wondered if they could help somehow, and the stay-behind men decided to help while the wives and children would stay inside the shelter in case of an emergency. Although it passed midnight, the appearance of people embracing each other's for separation in tears could be seen everywhere. The shelter group went out of the town while carrying their luggages before dawn. The sun had raised high now, the people were divided between those who prepared for the battle and those who took a nap. Most of the stay-behind group believed in the goddess of good harvests party. Even so, we will protect our town ourselves. We'll do what we can. They were filled with such strong spirits. Even if the people had decreased, there was more liveliness than usual, so Rinku sat on the instant rampart behind the town. It was unknown where he was looking as he looked at the distance. Naturally, by his side was Yoma, who had brought some popsicles for the two of them to enjoy. Rinku, where did you get these? Yoma, what? The popsicles. I've got my ways, just eat it. Rinku, weird, salty, then sweet, no. Seriously, how? Yoma, SSHH, just enjoy the moment with your bro. Then, Yue, Shia, Aiko, the students, Tio, Wool, David, and several guard knights arrived there. Even though they noticed Aiko and the others approaching, they didn't turn around and made David and the knights frown, but Aiko called on Jem earlier than them. Aiko, Rinku. How are your preparations? Did you need something else? Rinku, no, there's no problem, was Aiko. Of course, Rinku simply answered so without turning around. Unable to endure his attitude, David snapped on him. David, oi, you. What's with your attitude towards Aiko? Towards your honored teacher? Normally, I wouldn't overlook the details about the artifact you carry and the details about your method of repulsing the army of demonic beasts, but I didn't do that because Aiko had asked me earnestly, you know. At least. Aiko, David. Can you keep quiet for now? David, affirmative. Yoma then mockingly threw his arm while speaking to Aiko in regards to David. Yoma, you better keep that one on a leash. I'm not sure how much healing one can be given before it's a burden. However, when Aiko told him to shut up, he dejectedly shut his mouth. His appearance was just like a dog. Even though he wasn't a demi-human, one could see dog ears and a tail. Now, those things seemed to hang down dejectedly because the owner was angry. Aiko, boys. About the black-robed man. Apparently, that's the subject. Anguish oozed out from Aiko's words. Yoma began to ignore the conversation, more focused on his ice cream. Aiko, are you going to confirm his identity? Even if I find him, you're telling me to not kill him, right? Rinku, yes. It's necessary to confirm his identity. For the time being, I'll just bring him here. Aiko, Rinku, I'll bring the black robe to Sensei. You were thinking as a teacher, so I'll do just that. Aiko, Rinku, thank you very much. Aiko was a little surprised because of the unexpected cooperation from Rinku. Rinku didn't even turn around even now, and thinking Rinku had a lot to think about, she decided to receive his goodwill. She muttered I am powerless as she sighed secretly, then Aiko said her gratitude with a bitter smile. It looked like Aiko's talk was over, and this time Tio moved forward and called Rinku. Tio, Fumu, I wonder if it's okay. This one Mas, Gohan. Matter to talk. Is a request, will you hear it? Rinku, Tio, right. Rinku, thou, don't tell me that this one's existence was forgotten. Ha ha, there's also something like this. Because it was an unfamiliar voice, Rinku and Yoma inadvertently looked over his shoulder, and there was black clothes with golden embroidery which resembled a kimono and splendidly slipped down, white and smooth shoulders together with an enchanting valley. Followed by the beautiful leg which peeped from the cut from the knee, a black-haired, golden-eyed beautiful woman. For a moment, his eyes seemed dubious and he remembered with, now that you mention, then called her name. Obviously, Tio, whose existence was forgotten, was far from getting angry. She was blushing and her breathing became rough. Something like this, was unknown, but it'd be better to not ask her about it. Tio, NNH. That's, after this battle end and thou send Will back, art thou going to continue to travel? Rinku, that's so. Tio, Fumu, this one's request is that. This one want to accompany thou. Yoma spoke up, extremely confused. Yoma, why the hell are you two talking like that? But they both ignored Yoma. Rinku, I refuse. Tio, ha ha. I immediate answer just as expected. As expected of Mars, Kohon. Of course it's not for free. I'll call thou, master, from now on, and dedicated all of this one to thee. Body and mind, all of them. How is it? Rinku, just return into the ground. While spreading her arms, Tio declared to become Rinku's slave with an expression of ecstasy, and Rinku, who looked at her as if looking at a filth, immediately casted her away. Tio's body shook again. Her cheek became rose-colored. No matter who saw her, they'd thought of her as a pervert. Even the surrounding people were taken aback. Especially Yue, who had strong yearning and respect towards Ryujin tribe. Her no-mask-like expression crumbled with all of her feelings. Rinku, that's cruel. Master was the one who turned this one's body into this. This one want thou to take the responsibility. Everyone became, as they looked at Rinku, while Yoma was cackling underneath his breath. As expected, he couldn't just leave the ridiculous and false accusation alone. Rinku immediately looked at Tio's direction and he glared at her with veins popped. His glare asked what she meant by that. Tio, oh, to be seen as filth by those eyes again. Ha ha. Gulp. Look, isn't this one strong? Her body shuddered again because of Rinku's glare. Then Tio began to explain her thought process that reached extraordinary conception to declare herself as Rinku's slave. Tio, even in my hometown, this one only have 1-2 fights, and this one's particular endurance surpassed them. That's why, to be held down by other and even to felt pain like pain never happened until now and only until now. Because the guard knights nearby didn't know Tio came from Ryujin tribe, Tio's words trickled down with some omission. Tio, that's why, when this one fought Master, it's the first time this one was knocked down, being held down, and tasted the pain and defeat for the first time. That's right, that fist which resonated with this body's core. The impacts that always aimed at unpleasant points. The pain that could felt throughout this one's body. Ha ha. Although Tio said that herself, the knights who didn't know she was from Ryujin race turned their gaze towards Rinku as if they looked at a criminal. If one's heard it objectively, it was a completely like a woman assaulting case. How could you assaulted such beautiful woman? Was the noise raised by the knights? They didn't plainly blamed him because they felt pity on the victim, Tio. Rather, the knights with strong sense of justice were perplexed because she looked so happy. Yue, in other words, Rinku opened a new door for you. Tio, that's it. This one's body is already useless without Master. Yue, gross. Yoma, don't lie to yourself, you're into that shit. Yue's expression was distorted as if she saw something unpleasant. Her tone no longer carried respect when Tio said her agreement. Spontaneously, Rinku revealed his feeling. He was completely taken aback. Tio, furthermore. Tio's perverted look suddenly changed as she began fidgeting while she held her hip with her hands in embarrassment. Tio, this one's first time was stolen already. With those words, everyone's faces showed their surprise as they looked at Rinku, Yoma's laugh muffled in the distance. Rinku, that did not happen, not in this reality, or any other. Tio, this one had decided to only admit stronger man than this one as companion. But, there's no such person in this one's hometown. To be defeated, and to be held down like that, was the first time, to suddenly use this one's ass. Moreover. Such intensity, that's why thou art this one's master. This one want thou to take responsibility. Tio's eyes were moistened as she looked at Hajime while holding her butt. The knight's eyes said, this guy just a criminal after all. And continued with, to suddenly attack the ass, as they talked and floated shuddering expressions. Even Aiko and the others who knew the truth glared at Hajime with blaming eyes. Even Yue and Shia's expressions by his side said, that's a little, as they averted their gazes. Even before the approaching of the army, Hajime was dragged into a situation where he was surrounded by enemies on all sides. Tio, why didn't you have things to do? That's why you went out from your hometown. Because Yue and the others averted their gazes, Rinku replied desperately about Ryujin race's investigation. Tio, Umu. There's no problem. It absolutely will become more efficient if this one is beside Master. It's just like hitting two birds with one stone. Look, aren't there various things happened in travel? It's okay to let out the frustration on this one, okay? It's also okay to do it stronger. Isn't it a good thing for Master? Rinku, there's only demerit with a pervert by my side. Tio clung to him, but Rinku just cast her away. It followed by the guard knight's resentment, female students who saw Rinku as a maggot, male students who felt a complex about women from different world as they looked at Rinku with envy, Aiko who started to preach about illicit sexual relationship, and Will who somehow looked at Rinku with eyes of respect. Inside such chaotic situation, the army kept approaching him, and when Rinku started to become tired of it, they finally came. Rinku, they've arrived, huh? Suddenly, a gigantic red dragon flies in from where the beasts were coming from, a familiar voice pounding through the air. Yoma, Rinku buddy. You ready to enjoy the show? Exclamation mark. The dragon was massive, at least twice the size of Tio in her dragon form, and there was Yoma, riding it like a crazed madman. The dragon's scales red as blood itself, it had several rows of teeth protruding from its mouth. Rinku suddenly turned his gaze towards the mountain range area in the north. He displayed his narrowed eyes as he looked at the distance. Even though they weren't in location that could be seen by naked eyes, Rinku could clearly saw it from the image from unmanned reconnaissance planes which displayed on his magic eye crystal. There was a crowd of demonic beasts who completely wrapped the ground. Beside human-type demonic beasts like Brutal, there were 3-4 meter big and black wolf-like demonic beasts, and there were also lizard-like demonic beasts with 6 legs, Phaeton-like demonic beasts with needles protruded from their backs, Mantis-like demonic beasts with 4 sides. Huge spider-like demonic beasts with numerous tentacles grown all over their bodies, and there were pure white, 2-headed snakes. It truly a rich variation of demonic beasts, and their march made the ground tremble as cloud of dust was scattered by the tremendous force. Their number seemed to have increased further since the time he confirmed it at the mountain. It was a large army of around 50,000 to 60,000. In addition, there were also flying-type demonic beasts above the large crowd. They could be compared to the Pteranodon. One of the tens of Pteranodon fakers was especially big, and the person's shadow could slightly be seen on it. It was probably the black-robed man. Although Aiko's manner showed she didn't want to believe it, it was Shimizu Yukitoshi 8 or 9 out of 10 cases. Yue, Rinku. Shia, Yoma. Yue and Shia noticed something approached them from the change in the boy's atmosphere. They called out to them. Rinku turned his gaze towards the two and he nodded once, following that he turned his glance towards Yoma and led the other two to hop onto the dragon Yoma was riding. Rinku looked down at Aiko and the others. Rinku, they've come. Although it's considerably earlier than the schedule, it'll be 30 minutes until their arrival. The number are more than 50,000. They're a mix of more than 2 kind of demonic beasts. Hearing the number of demonic beasts had increased further, Aiko and the others turned paler. Towards Aiko and the others who looked uneasy. Rinku, don't make that face, was Aiko. There'll be no problem because there's only addition of several tens of thousand. Just as planned, those who can fight should stand by the wall side, in case of emergency. Well, there'll be no turn for them though. Without any fighting mood, Fink told them to leave it to him, and Aiko narrowed her eyes as they slightly sparkling. Aiko, I understand, though I don't know what I can do just by standing here just as you said. Somehow please be safe. As Aiko said that, the guard knight said, I wonder if it's okay to leave it to them, and, even though it's too late, we should go to the shelter, as they ran while carrying the information towards the town. Even the students looked at the 2 boys with complexed eyes once, then ran after Aiko. Beside Rinku and his party, the remaining were only Will and Tio. Will was talking about something to Tio, then he ran after Aiko and the others after he bowed to Rinku. Tio answered Rinku's questioning face with a wry smile. Tio, because this one will use all of this one's power to overcome this incident, then at the very least this one's wanted Will boy to forgive this one about the adventures, that kind of talk. That's why this one will help me. What, even if this one's magic power isn't recovered enough for dragon form, this one's flame and wind are quite the real deal, K. Ryujin race was called odd existence by the church, and although they could be considered as demi-human race, they could directly manipulated magic power just like demonic beasts. Therefore, even though she wasn't an all-attribute, chantless, no magic circle genius like Yue, there were attributes she excelled at, and she seemed to be capable to do it chantless just like Yue. Tio's self claimed that as she vehemently stuck out her chest to deliberately emphasized it, but Rinku just silently throw a ring made of magic crystallization stone. Although Tio showed a questioning look, she opened her eyes wide when she understood it was a magic power tank made of god crystal, then she looked at Rinku with moistened eyes and speak with a shaking voice. Tio, Master, to propose right before a fight. This one, of course, this one's answer is. Rinku, as if. I am only lending it to you because you have the duty as the battery, no more, no less. Rather, did you just try to be the fool like a certain someone just now? Yue, I see, that black history. Yue dropped her shoulders with unpleasant expression because her thought pattern was somewhat similar to this pervert. Rinku's objection was completely ignored as Tio put the ring on her finger and gazed at it with a grin while she was also being ignored by him, and finally the large group of demonic beasts could be seen by naked eyes. People with bows and magic arrays in their hands gathered on the outer wall. The ground began to tremor, and demonic beasts' roars could be heard together with dust storm in the distance. Some people started to pray to the god and some people wore expressions as if they'd be dead at any time. Having seen it, Rinku had Yoma direct the dragon above a crowd of pedestrians. Using transmutation, he created the speech stand by piling up the ground. He didn't thought of easing people's anxiety because it had simply turned into panic if friendly fire happened. Something suddenly climbed on the foundation outside the wall, and the people who thought it was one of the approaching demonic beasts were glaring at it, but they were bewildered because where their gazes gathered was a white-haired, eye-patched boy. After he confirmed everyone's gazes were turned to him, Hajime inhaled then speak with a voice that could reach the heaven. Rinku, listen. O brave people of Al Town. Our victory is nothing but confirmed. Wondering what was suddenly said, the townspeople looked at each other. Rinku looked at their confusion with narrowed eyes and continued his words. Rinku, if you ask for the reason, it is because the goddess has taken side with us. That's right, it's the goddess of good harvest, everyone know, Aiko. Hearing those words, everyone began to raise noises with, Aiko. Goddess of good harvest. Aiko, who's accompanied by the guard knights behind and had been helped guiding the people, became stupefied. Rinku, as long as Aiko is beside us, we are unbeatable. Aiko is the living god sent by the heaven as an ally to humanity, and brought to us good harvest and victory. I am Aiko's sword and also her shield. I am here to answer her desire to protect everyone. Look. This is my power which guided by Aiko. As he said that, Rinkt pulled out Schlägen from the void and anchors from its barrel pierced the ground to fix its position. Following that, he crouched and the townspeople observed him as he aligned his sight towards the vanguard of demonic beasts, the Pteranodon Fakers, and he pulled the trigger. A bright red spark released from Schlägen and accompanied with killing intent, a blinding light ran through the sky in an instant. It crushed one of the Pteranodon Fakes which was several kilometers away, and several others on the surrounding descended into the ground because their wings were pulverized by the after effect. As is, Rinku continued to fire for the second and third times, and the demonic beasts in the sky were exterminated. Then, he purposely altered his aim and the rather huge Pteranodon Fake started to fall as it was confused by what happened. Moreover, the black robed man who rode on it was blown by the after effect. The black robe blown into the air and he tried to resist the fall. He didn't have the time to bring the black robe to Aiko until all of the demonic beasts were dealt with, so he chose to defeat the fastest ones to escape for now. Although Aiko would be angry if she heard he shot him down, he didn't care at the least if that person was hurt after all. At least Aiko might not noticed it because he shot it down while they were still far away. Rinku finished exterminating the demonic beasts in the sky and he calmly turned around. There were the appearances of the townspeople who became dumbfounded and slack-jawed. Rinku, all hail Aiko. Hajime raised words of praise for Aiko as his last duty. Then, in the next moment, all hail Aiko. Long live Aiko. Cheers for Aiko. All hail Aiko. All hail Goddess. Long live Goddess. Cheers for Goddess. All hail Goddess. Inside Al Town, it was no longer just her nickname, a true goddess was born. Apparently, their anxiety had blown away as everyone in the town raised shouts of praise as their shining eyes looked towards Aiko, the goddess, their hope. In the distance, Aiko's face turned crimson as she trembled. Her eyes immediately turned towards Rinkus and her small mouth moved as it said, "What do you mean by this?" Rinku turned towards the large crowd of demonic beasts again. Rinku pushed such facade to Aiko because he had his own reason. First, Rinku's activity would surely make the church and the kingdom move in the future, and because Aiko would confronted them if they tried to harm him or Yoma, it'd be better for her words as goddess of good harvest carried power at that time. If they could overcome the town's emergency with Aiko's power, then the townspeople would started their own rumor and the name goddess of good harvest would surely grab people's hearts further. At that time, she wasn't only a useful talent for the kingdom but also the goddess that people supported, so the church and the kingdom couldn't easily put their hands on her as her words carried more power. The second reason was simply because the townspeople would only become frightened and hostile if they were shown a big power. That's why even if they showed their power, the townspeople's wonder and fear would be relieved when they remembered it came from the goddess who supported them, and the hostility could be changed to goodwill. Even if they were chased by the church, there'd be people who cooperated with them, and that's a good thing. His number one reason was so that the townspeople would not panic and did something wrong, and he immediately thought to do that. Afterwards Aiko would told him various things, but there were also merits for Aiko and she should overlook it because it was the result of her decision. It'd be okay to just escape once everything's over. With townspeople's shouts that they wouldn't be defeated by demonic beasts because of Aiko on his back, along with Aiko's piercing glance, and the guard knights floated smiles as they muttered, "Just what, that guy's understood well what we meant," and looked at him. Rinku took out 2 Metherize ammunition belt from treasure box and put them on his shoulders as he advanced ahead. On her right was Yue as always, on his left was Xia with Orkan on her shoulder which Rinku loaned to her, and beside him was also Tio who absent-mindedly staring at the ring of magic crystallization stone, and in front of them manning the dragon was Yoma, who had pulled down his blindfold to let it hang around his neck. On the horizon, the Pteranodon fakers who fell to the ground as if they weren't related to all of this and demonic beasts who marched single-mindedly filled their view. Yoma turned to the 4 behind them. "Yoma, Rinku. You ready?" "Tio, oh my, those eyes." As Xia and Tio both blushed at the sight of Yoma's eyes, Rinku nodded. "Rinku, let's do it."